thank you for this warm introduction, and it's really great to be here with all of you at Impact. I want to tell you about a text message that I received from a friend. Have you seen this? She said. She was reading a blog post, and it was titled, "My First AI Build, the Esther Therapy Bot." Apparently, there was a man who had recently broken up with his girlfriend, and he was filled with regret. He was questioning himself, and he was having difficulty understanding where he had gone wrong. And during that whole time, he was listening to my podcast, Where Should We Begin? And he had decided, in his own words, that I would be the perfect person to help him gain clarity. Unfortunately, I was not available for an appointment, and so he decided to recreate me in 3 weeks. And now, from what I hear, he is texting with me regularly. As I am getting older, I do think about mortality, but I do have to admit that I never thought that immortality would come in the form of a machine. You heard about me professionally, but I am also a mother, a spouse, a partner, a friend, and a human person. I have spent nearly 40 years studying relationships all over the world, and in particular, I explore the intricacies of romantic relationships, family bonds, friendships, and relationships at work. I study the nature of erotic desire, monogamy and its discontents, infidelity, polyamory, and all kinds of new relational arrangements. And each of these arrangements are upending the traditional paradigms of what is a couple, what is a family, how do we define connection or intimacy, and how do we define a circle of care. And all these are shaped by how technology is changing human behavior. I've actually become increasingly interested in the convergence of relationships, mental health, and technology. And artificial intelligence, and AI Esther in particular, has led me to ask a whole new set of questions. To what extent can AI replicate the intimate experiences of a human confidant, as I am as a therapist? What is lost and what is supercharged? But I do have to admit that for me, there is also a very narcissistic question that I keep asking myself, and it's very simple. Is she better than me? You know, my robot counterpart, she has no office hours. She's available day and night. He can write to her and communicate with her at all times. And the man who built AI Esther says that she is pure, meaning she has no preconceived notions. And she is knowledgeable because he has access to my entire corpus of work. And she never forgets anything, you know. She didn't have a bad day that distracts her. She actually does forget some details of her childhood. I do have to let you know of that. But it is a sort of like a Pornhub or sex doll or an OnlyFans playmate, all of which have no needs and no expectations, and they are here only for your pleasure. So I am curious about the interaction between us and the machine. But I'm even more interested in how this interaction is changing the way that we connect to each other and how we treat each other as humans. We talk extensively about artificial intelligence. I would like to talk about the other AI, the rise of artificial intimacy. what happens to our relationships when we become accustomed to always on demand, frictionless delivery of our every delight? These distorted expectations are a major contributing factor to the epidemic of modern loneliness. And modern loneliness is confusing because it masks as hyperconnectivity. We can have 1,000 virtual friends easily and no one to feed our cat. And for all the daters here, we all know the feeling of having endless options on the apps and then have very few real connections to speak of. And let me actually ask you this. Raise your hand if you find yourself spending much of your workday, or your day for that matter, in front of a screen, emailing, Slacking, Zooming, and the rest. Raise your hand. Yeah, thank you. And raise your hand if at the end of such a day, you're dying to finally close the screen. Yes. But then, raise your hand if then you go home and you find that you're just so tired that you only have energy to watch TV, another screen. Raise your hand. And then, we're not done. As you're watching TV, you find that you're also scrolling on your phone at the same time. Raise your hand, for honesty's sake. And then, as you're watching TV and you're scrolling, you lift your head and you notice that there's someone sitting next to you doing the exact same thing. And we wonder why we're talking about a sex recession. You know, and then it goes on. And now you don't need to raise your hands anymore because I have a sense of where this goes. At one point, one of us lifts their head and says something important, significant to the other person. But the other person is still doing this. And so you talk to them and they go, uh-huh. That telephonic distance that tells you immediately that they're half listening, that they may be there, but they are not present. And you feel a sense of grief, an inchoate sense of grief, because somebody is there, but you're not really feeling the connection. And that sense of grief, I have begun to call ambiguous loss. Ambiguous loss is a term that I borrow from psychologist Pauline Boss when she describes situations of mourning that we can't resolve because we don't know, is the person there or not there? Like if you have somebody who has Alzheimer or dementia, they are physically present, but they are emotionally and psychologically gone or absent. Or on the other side, if you have a situation of deployment or disappearance or hostage or miscarriage, they are physically gone, but they are emotionally and psychologically intensely present. And in both of these situations, it's difficult for us to know, are they here or are they not here? So I just want to get a sense from you. Have you experienced ambiguous loss? Raise your hand. So you know what I'm talking about. You see, we have come to accept distracted attention as if it is enough, and it is not. Artificial intimacy is full of disrupted connections that have become normalized and socially acceptable. And when I describe artificial intimacy, I link it directly to how it intersects with modern loneliness. These last few years have been characterized by prolonged uncertainty when it comes to climate, economy, the politics, and the global wars, and health for sure. Can you blame us for falling deeper into the siren song of our increasingly predictive technologies? We have 2 years of lockdown and a decline of socialization. We have the increasing and the rapidly increasing acceleration of the virtualization of our lives. And we have increasingly a contactless living. You don't have to leave your house to buy food, or to work, or to exercise, or even to date. And we wonder why we are talking about loneliness. And the main change, actually, one that really interests me a lot is this. Let me ask you, how many of you grew up playing freely on the street when you were a child? Raise your hand. Right, right. And how many of you who have kids or know of kids have their children play freely on the street? All right, this is very telling, people. This is very telling. Because when we used to play freely on the street, we had decades of social negotiation where we had unprompted, unscripted, unmonitored, unchoreographed interaction with other kids with whom we made friends, we made enemies, we made war, we made peace, we repaired, we ruptured, and we practiced. We practiced relatedness. And the absence of this, combined with all the other stuff that I've just talked about, is leading us to a major social atrophy. This is turbocharged social atrophy. Endless suggestions of what to buy, who to date, what to eat, what to listen to, flow into our palms, fooling us to think that we have control over the unknowable and the messy world that we live in. And this deluge of perfectly curated feeds doesn't help. Now, just to make sure, get me wrong, I love my technologies. I almost feel like it's assisted living, precocious assisted living. I don't know if you know what assisted living means here, but it comes with old age in America. Our calendars, they tell us where to be. Waze tells us how to get there. Spotify tells me what to listen to on my journey to my destination. ChatGPT helps me write the perfect email, and AI Esther can purportedly help fix your relationship. Honestly, to be really truthful, my apps are often far more reliable than my husband. I have benefited tremendously from all my robots. Each of these predictive technologies is promising to unburden me of the inconveniences of life. And you would think that having all the answers, or so many answers, in the palms of our hands would make us more self-aware and more self-confident. But in fact, it's not the case. We're actually becoming more and more anxious. And we're becoming more and more anxious because we don't get to experience uncertainty, experimentation, the unexpected, or dealing with the consequences of making bad choices that haven't been filtered by an algorithm, and then taking the lessons that come with it. Our culture of optimization seeks to smooth out life's rough edges. But what if removing all these bumps is flattening us? What is it doing to our ability to live with the messiness and the imperfections that are intrinsic to connection and to intimacy, to love and to desire? What is it doing to our capability of tolerating the uncertainties of life? And are we missing out on the beauty and the mystery of spontaneity, on the exploration and discovery that comes with serendipity? We are squelching happenstance in favor of false certainties. And my question is this: what is the connection between the exponential mental health crisis and this, the anxiety disorders, the burnout, the depression, and the OCD that are all symptoms of this era? when I was preparing to come here, I thought, 10 years ago, I would never have been invited to a conference that gathered business leaders, politicians, and tech people. Kind of a good business conference. What would a therapist do there? Why? Because relationships, which is my area of study, were considered soft. And they were considered feminine. And feminine skills, how would you say? You regard them in principle, but you disregard them in practice. And basically, the idea was it has no connection to the bottom line. And everything I have been describing until now is basically happening, as I see it, with two parallel relationship revolutions. One that is happening at home, and one that is happening at work. So, the first one has to do with expectations. Something really very, very interesting has happened. And I can locate it around 2 or 3 big societal changes, but nothing comes from one source only. It's always an amalgamation of things. But here's a few things that happened. The decline of religion, together with the decline of traditional social structures, together with the rise of individualism. What has happened is that we have engineered a transfer of our most basic foundational needs from religion and community to our partners and our jobs. We are faced with unprecedented expectations from relationships. In our romantic life, we talk about our partners as a soulmate, the one and only. The one and only who should actually give us what once an entire village used to provide. And you know, there's something ironic when you think that people are looking for a soulmate on an app. But a soulmate used to mean God. And we have collapsed the spiritual and the social, and we have brought to our partner needs that we used to look for in the realm of the divine. Mystery, transcendence, meaning, wholeness, and so forth. In our work life, we want our jobs to take care of our physical and emotional well-being, to be the source of purpose and fulfillment, and all of this sometimes while we're hopping from one gig to another. So one is the rise of unprecedented expectations and the transfer of our needs from religion and community to our partner and our jobs. 2 is the changing role of emotions. On the one hand, we have emotional capitalism, as sociologist Eva Illouz talks about it. I think it's an amazing term. In romantic relationships, my patients will frequently talk about supply and demand. Or this is a good deal, or this isn't the thing that I bargained for, or I am single again and I'm going back out on the market. In our frenzy of romantic consumerism, dates can almost look like job interviews. But on the other end, we have brought emotions to the workplace. Emotions which were once the scourge of the workplace are now linked to enhanced professional performance. We talk about authenticity and trust and belonging and empathy and vulnerability and transparency. They have become business buzzwords. This is unthinkable not too long ago. We talk about psychological safety in the same breath as we're talking about performance indicators. In sum, love and work today are sharing a vocabulary, and no matter if it's at home or at work, relationships have become the new bottom line. There's a Mercer survey that emphasizes how much we want to be treated as human beings at work. And it occurs to me that it's quite ironic that in a culture that is rapidly switching to machine learning, to virtual self-onboarding, to chatbots for customer service, the thing that we're all craving more than anything at work is care, empathy, recognition, and respect. And as we embrace our robot counterparts, we must also remember the nuances of relationship skills are yet to be automated, while many of us are engaged in a debate whether they should be. Relationship skills are becoming more important all the time because the norms and the rules that have regulated them for so long in so many societies are actually literally shifting under our feet. Rules that used to be set are now to be negotiated. Just about everything relationship is a freaking negotiation. Just think about you and those of you who have young children, or those of you who have older parents. And how many parents say, I would never have dared to say this to my parents? Plenty of people these days are trying to make relationships simpler and easier, smoother, more efficient, like AI Esther. But most of our relationship dilemmas do not have easy or discrete binary answers. In trying to reduce complex issues down to zeros and ones, we've become more black and white in our thinking. Why are we surprised that we've also become more polarized? The issues that I deal with are full of gray areas, and they require technicolor strategies. I want to share with you an example from a session that I did in Where Should We Begin? About 6 months into the war in Ukraine. And they came to me, husband and wife, because they wanted an understanding of what to do when there was no legitimately right answer. At the time I met them, she's in France with the 16-year-old, he's in Odessa with the 18-year-old waiting to be drafted. The dilemma involves two different moral paradigms. She says, think of your family and save yourself first. He says, God gave me an order. My nation needs me. I don't make that decision myself. I want you to listen for a moment.
The first conversation was really tough because when I asked whether someone how are you, and he said, I don't even know. Because I'm afraid to ask myself this question, because I'm afraid there is so much pain there that I don't even want to live.
Can you hear?
On the other hand, from what you have just shared, which is absolutely true, I was kind of feeling I was feeling lonely, I was feeling not loved. There is like my man of my life is not besides me. I don't hear anymore so many compliments. That is my need. Lifestyle has changed so drastically. We were kind of afraid to approach each other. I was afraid to hurt him because I knew that he's going through air alerts 5 times per day. He has to go to bunker to save himself and our son. And I need just to be loved. I want to be loved. I want to hear compliments. I want to be the same woman for him.
My first reaction was, what are you talking about? About compliment? We have war. We have difficult situation. I try to do something helpful for my country, for my family, for compliment. But then I just thinking about it, because I think she just go through difficult time now. She has needs. It's like if my wife need good words like compliments, say you're so beautiful today, I love you so much, and it's very important for her.
Andrew, it's not
Yes.
just important for her. It's not just important
Why?
for her. Because you too feel this. But if you allow yourself to connect with those feelings, it's even more scary. If you remember how much you love her and how much you miss her and how much you would love to touch her and how much you would like her to hold you, you will connect with a different set of feelings. At this point, you respond from the heroic position of I'm fighting for my country and it's crucial. Yeah. But there is also I'm deeply connected to you and I don't want to lose you. And so if you make it that she wants to be loved while you are expressing the love of the nation, you're missing the point for yourself, not for her, for yourself.
Relationships exist in a context. And AI Esther doesn't have a personal experience or feelings. But me, when I sit with this couple, I am filled with personal memories. Myself as a child of 2 Holocaust survivors, Polish survivors, who were the sole survivors of their entire family. And as I listen to their story of forced relocation, I'm thinking about my parents who had to flee their homes, and I'm feeling some of their pain translated through my connection with them. And I find myself at a particular moment crying and shedding the tears that he himself could not shed. The duality that each of them is facing creates moral distress. Each choice they're going to make comes with grief. And many of us here tonight are currently living with heavy questions that don't have a right and a wrong answer. Like, when a relationship is too good to leave and too bad to stay, shall I stay or shall I go? Should I unplug grandma? Should I freeze my eggs? Should I accept that I'm going to be living in this new country permanently and stop making temporary choices? All these decisions are moral dilemmas. All of them also involve grief, and that's normal. Relationships are complex, and they often are not problems that we need to solve, but paradoxes that we need to manage. Genuine intimacy is full of contradictions. It lives side by side with closeness and distance, care and aggression, excitement and boredom, contempt and admiration, trust and betrayal, love and the fears that we bring to love. To connect is actually a verb that we need to conjugate actively in many languages. And we all need to practice these conjugations when we want to become fluent in a language. I wish you a beautiful practice. Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you. Let's have a conversation. We're going to do a bit of a Q&A, which I know is very new at Impact, but I thought I can't just come and talk to people without talking with people. So that would not be relating. There's a mic in the center, and you can line up with some questions, but here is the thing, people. A question is really a question. It's short and brief. It's not a long paragraph with a question mark at the end. If you get lost in your question, as it often happens to all of us, I will gladly stop you. All right. Whatever you heard or whatever it triggered in you or inspired you or all the things we haven't yet mentioned. Go ahead.
Esther, it is wonderful to hear you here. Thank you for this inspirational talk. I am a medical oncologist. a scientist, a drug developer, and a whole health medicine practitioner. How does the practice of connection become something that is so standard in our healthcare protocols?
Standard or alienated?
It is currently alienated. How do we get it to become standard?
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me your name?
It's Alex.
Alex, okay. Yes, we just continue. We do about a bunch, we'll do a whole round, and then we, okay.
Hello, my name is Victor. I have a question to you about how did you come to those universal, you could say, truths? I'm a very technical person. I've been programming for 6 years. I'm actually a volunteer here at Impact. And I like to be concrete. I like math. I like the truth, which you can prove it's truth. But with psychology, you cannot do it as easily. So that's why I'm asking, what is the protocol that you've used to come to those fundamental truths?
Yes. Yep, keep going.
Hello, my name is Magda Dorosz. I work for Hillel Poland, working with Jewish students and young adults. My question would be about fighting the loneliness that comes on so many different levels. A lot of the people that we work with discover their Jewish roots. So the trauma, the generational trauma being passed on, the trauma of the last over 2 years of the war with Ukraine, in Ukraine, and working with the refugees, trying to help them become fully together again, and then the war in Israel, between Israel and Hamas, where people are feeling alienated, lonely, excluded from their circles. How do we put it all together? How do we allow people to feel holy again?
And you would like to know if I have a protocol for that?
Certainly, whatever I can use to make my work easier.
All right, beautiful questions. Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Agna Vitekanaite. I work as a partnership development manager at Ertico ITS Europe, a public-private partnership for sustainable mobility. But I have a question on a more personal level.
By the way, people, I don't need to know where you work.
Perfect, even
because
better.
Tonight we will not talk about your LinkedIn resume, but we are going to talk about your unofficial resume.
Perfect, thank you so much.
The one that actually made you who you are. Yes.
So I have a question. To what extent our personal relationship at home, from our early family dynamics, let's say, influence our professional relationships at work?
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Tell me your name one more time.
Agna.
Agna, yep. All right, 2 more, and then we'll take this. All right.
Okay, hi, I'm Tomasz. Thank you very much for your speech. So I'm a father of 2 boys. And
how old?
2 and 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite shocked when I see people raising hands when you ask whose kids are playing freely on the street. So if I can ask you for advice on how to raise kids, maybe a broad one, but maybe go to specific in the, how to teach them to make a good personal connections in this unconnected or fake connected world.
Beautiful. People, we're here for the night. You just understand. We're finally dealing with the existential quandaries. Yes.
My name is Carolina, and I have a really easy question. According to you, are the romantic relationships better or worse than they were 100 years ago?
Last one.
Hi, my name is Magda. I got all my answers, burning questions were answered by you, by your podcast and by your speeches. But my question personal is, I know you were very excited to visit Poland. And how do you like it? And how is the experience for you?
Okay, let's stop here and hopefully Maybe we can do more after that. All right. I'm going to start with Victor. Where is Victor? Okay. I think that you should continue do what you do, and I will continue do what I do. You deal with technical problems. I deal with adaptive challenges. Adaptive challenges are not protocols. Adaptive challenges are the problems that require a change of values and perspective. And they often involve a type of knowledge that isn't about data, but that is also about intuition and experience. And these coexist. It's not this knowledge versus that knowledge, but it's a very different way of approaching problems, which is part of why I said relationship problems and many other existential issues are not ones and zeros. They're not binaries. You can't reduce them. Because the whole point, should I unplug grandma? Should I freeze my eggs? Should I leave? All of these involve contradictions that you need to be able to hold. And maturity comes with the ability to hold those seemingly opposing needs, desires, decisions. When you are in a relationship, you often basically have a very good thing we can do. In a relationship, by the way, between two people, or two groups, or two nations. You take one side of the equation, and you project the other thing on the other person. And basically, you outsource the part of the decision that is challenging to hold, because it's difficult to live with two polarities inside of us. So we do this all the time. We just say, you are, whatever the thing is, that is part of the decision, but that we don't want to hold. I don't have universal truths. I have thoughts. Nothing I said is true. I sound confident, but I'm sure of nothing. I stand here. Here's the difference. I like to be authoritative, but I'm not authoritarian. And there's a big difference. Those who think they know are authoritarian. Those who help the ones who don't know ask better questions are authoritative. My work is about asking the questions under the questions. That's what I'm actually dealing with, not so much the truths. And certainly not about protocols. For any of you who have listened to Where Should We Begin, it's basically a podcast where I record live therapy sessions. Not patients, never been patients. There's 9,000 people applying at this point. So basically, you're sitting there like a fly on the wall, and you're listening in on the conversations of other people, couples, families mostly, and individuals, that you never hear in reality because people lie through their teeth. And especially when it comes to romantic love, they don't tell you the truth. So here is the session for you. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because there's barely 2 sessions the same. I don't work with a model in which you fit inside the model and then we work a certain way. I explore together with the people every time, and it's very hard to learn from somebody who never does twice the same thing. I get it. So I'm actually going to go to Agna. The question about to what extent does your early childhood, does your early history, the way that you learn to relate, affect the way that you work? I think one of the questions that I love to use for this is the following. You can do it with me. Were you raised for autonomy and self-reliance, or were you raised for loyalty and interdependence? If you're raised for autonomy, which usually is, sometimes it's a real message, stand on your own 2 feet, you only have yourself to trust, nobody can tell you what to do as best as you can, that kind of messaging. But sometimes it happens because there is neglect and abandonment and there's no option, so you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. And if you were raised for loyalty and interdependence, you're raised with messages that say your problems are my problems. It's not just you. And your happiness is my happiness. And your decisions are made by thinking about how they will affect us. Basically, we are interdependent and interconnected. Can I ask you, how many of you were raised for autonomy and self-reliance? Raise your hand. I am in Poland. This is the interesting part. This is also highly cultural. How many of you were raised for loyalty and interdependence? Yeah. And now you ask yourself, how does that influence the way that you ask for help, the way that you talk about things that you struggle with, the way that you tend to think, I'm going to stay till 2 o'clock at the office because I need to do it, because nobody can do it as well as me, but I resent the fact that I have to do it, but I don't trust anyone else would. You've been there at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. I do think that there is a connection, which is why I call it the unofficial resume. It's your relationship story, your relationship history that comes with you to work every morning. Everybody wants to talk about bringing your whole self to work. I think you always do. It's just sometimes it's unconscious. How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with directness? How do you deal with feedback? How do you deal with criticism? I promise you, every one of us will answer this, and then we can make an extension and just say, and what is the story behind this? Not the cause and effect, the story. We are storytellers, right? Loneliness and isolation, you know, and that, maybe I can connect that with the question about coming to Poland. The first time I came to Poland was in 1990. 1 year after martial law lifted, 1 year after the war, the wall fell. And I came with my parents, who at the time they were living in Belgium, where they ended up after the war. And my parents, after the camps, 5 years in the camps, came to Belgium, were illegal refugees for 5 more years in Belgium, and then finally became citizens. And I came back in 97 with the Open Society, with Soros. I came back then again for the publications of my books. Then I came to teach here quite a few times at Jagiellonska. So I actually, nie rozumiem po polsku, but I have been here many times. They only spoke it when they didn't want me to understand. But they spoke German, French, Dutch, and Yiddish with me, so I got a few others. And I remember the stories of the secrets. You know, the first thing you're asking is, what do you do with the loneliness and the isolation of suddenly discovering, you know, that you are a Jew? A lot of Ukrainian Jews already left, you know, in the previous wave to Israel, discovering for the first time that they were Jews. So there is all the stories generally about what happens when you thought you are one person, and then one day you realize actually that you are someone else. As a whole, and this is true for the question around the healthcare, and this is true for this one, for me, is that we are way too accustomed at this point to go through events in life alone that throughout history we have never had to confront alone. And it is, and part of it has to do with this culture of individualism, and part of it has to do with the fact that we are more and more fractured and compartmentalized. So the first thing you do, whether it's the war in Gaza, whether it's whatever side you're on for that matter, is to be with people. But please, be with people whose experiences and whose stories and whose truths are different from yours, so that you actually get to experience the true closeness. You know, it's one thing to be connected just with those who are like you, but it's another thing to be recognized and respected by people whose point of view is very different. And both of those are necessary. And that means to meet any way you want, you know, relate to people, basically. I mean, we could have a long conversation about what it represents at this moment. I was talking with a someone in Warsaw. I mean, I did a whole bunch of interviews. So, and at one point I said, you know, the person was saying you can't meet people. We know each other. All the friends know each other. There is nobody new. And mom is very old, and I can't leave because she could die any day. And here I am completely stuck. And I said, a completely stupid idea. I said, I can't believe people pay me to say things like this. It's kind of obvious advice. But what if you took 2 friends, each person brought 5 people or 3 people that have never met to a dinner together? You would be mixing tradition and continuity together with innovation and newness. How about that? You know, it cannot be that you find yourself cloistered in an environment that is continuously closing in on you. You boys and the romantic relationships. Look, there's a lot of stuff out there at this point about the fact that, you know, the new milk bottle is the iPad. And what that is doing to child development, and I'm sure there may have even been presentations about that here today. I think that one of the beautiful things about your question, Thomas, where are you? Is the fact that you stood up here as a father, which I can tell you in this country, 1 or 2 generations back would never happen. I know, and I think you know that too. It's not my answer to the question, because it's a lot we need to say and we have to stop. It's the fact that one of the greatest changes in modern masculinity is the creation of modern fatherhood. And the role of the father no longer just as a material provider, but actually as an emotional unit. So the fact that you stood here and you asked a question that has nothing to do with work and money and business and all the traditional concerns that men are allowed to ask questions about, that in itself, for me, is beautiful social change that I hope your kids will once be told. To Carolina, it's one line. It's the research of Eli Finkel. Basically, the good relationships of today are often much better than the relationships in history. It's just that we have a very steep climb to Mount Olympus to be able to fulfill all these expectations that we are bringing to our relationships. I want you to be my best friend, my trusted confidant, my passionate lover to boot for the long haul, my intellectual equal, my co-parent, my fitness coach, and my professional booster. You know, all of this in one person. So great. So the view is always beautiful at the top of the mountain. It's just that not that many of us can climb that high. That is the truth about romantic relationships of today versus the ones of the past. Second, relationships of the past were basically organized around rules and duty and obligation. People had a lot of clarity and a lot of certainty, and they had very little freedom. Relationships of today have more options and choices that many people know what to do with. We have never been more free, and we have never been more alone, and we have never had more self-doubt. And so we have gone from wanting more personal expression to now wanting more connection. And what we need is both and. Thank you very much.